At the beginning of the new year, the world is anything but peaceful. The United States arrested Venezuelan President Maduro. And on January 6th, a single announcement from China's Ministry of Commerce imposed a comprehensive ban on dual-use items exported to Japan. A move powerful enough to push Japan back into an agrarian age. This time, it is the heaviest blow Japan has ever taken. In a sense, its path of industrialization can already be declared dead. Back then, the United States forced Japan to sign the Plaza Accord, and Japan lost 30 years. This time, our export controls can make Japan lose its entire future, because we have laid a net that cuts off its lifelines and blocks every road ahead. Today, we're going to talk in detail about what this latest round of restrictions on Japan really means. But before that, I want to start with Photoresist, because some people keep saying Japan can still use Photoresist to choke China's neck. So let's first make one thing clear: who is really choking whom? And from this, we can clearly see the fatal weakness of Japan's entire industrial system. In 2019, Japan attempted to distort history, triggering strong backlash from South Korea and igniting the Japan-South Korea trade war. In just a few months, the conflict ended with South Korea's complete defeat. Why? Because Japan cut off the upstream of South Korea's supply chain, and the most critical weapon was Photoresist. As soon as the trade war began, South Korea couldn't hold on. Samsung's Lee Jae-young was humiliated into flying to Japan to beg for reconciliation. Because without Photoresist, South Korea's chip industry would grind to a halt. So what about us? 5 years ago, Japan really could have used Photoresist to choke China's neck. At that time, we truly didn't pay enough attention to this technology. After all, the global Photoresist market was only worth $6.7 billion. Another needlepoint steals story: the market was too small, and Chinese companies lacked the incentive to invest heavily in R&D. If we truly went all in, burning one furnace of steel would have been enough to wipe out Japan's entire industry in one shot. But what about today? China took only 3 years to catch up. Low and mid-end photoresist now have fully independent supply chains, with lower costs and even better performance in some areas. High-end photoresist have already entered mass production, and in core performance metrics, they are rapidly closing the gap with Japan. Of course, Photoresist comes in many types and countless subfields. For example, in the EUV segment, Japan does still lead in the most advanced photoresists. So can Japan choke our neck? And will never get that chance. Because the moment it even tries, it would suffocate to death first. It's not that Japan wants to choke us, it's that we can directly strangle Japan. Just as Japan wants control at the upstream of South Korea's chip industry, we now fully control the upstream of Japan's photoresist industry. Those photoresists that claim global monopoly status, every critical raw material from top to bottom depends on Chinese supply. The rice bowl is firmly in our hands. Whether Japan gets to eat from it depends entirely on whether we're satisfied. If we're not, we can smash that bowl at any time. Fluorite is the source of high-purity hydrogen fluoride, a core raw material for photoresist. 90% of Japan's supply comes from China. 62% of the world's high-purity quartz sand is under our control. Without it, Japan can't even produce its special glass containers for photoresist. Then there are photoinitiator intermediate and specialty fluorochemicals. China supplies over half of the global market, and Japan has no real alternatives. And don't even mention gallium and germanium, essential semiconductor materials. Once we impose controls, Japan's entire photoresist production line comes to a complete stop. At this point, some people ask, China controls 50% to 90% of many raw materials but not 100%. So can Japan just find substitutes? I can only say this: you're oversimplifying industrial reality. These materials aren't vegetables you buy at the market. Capacity, technology, and process integration are built up over decades. You think they can switch suppliers just because they want to? Once we impose controls, what does that mean for Japan? It means production capacity drops by at least 80%. It means costs rise by at least 2 to 5 times. It means massive production lines shut down. And over half of industrial workers lose their jobs. Do you see it now? Who is really choking whom? The upstream raw material end is firmly in our hands. Japan doesn't even directly utter the words cutting off Photoresist supply. Otherwise, it would suffocate itself first. This is the confidence that comes from full industrial chain autonomy. The reason I started with Photoresist is to show the true meaning of this round of controls. Because many of Japan's so-called core industries will face exactly the same fate. Now, we prohibit the export of dual-use items for Japan's military purposes. What are dual-use items? Items that can be used for both civilian and military purposes. Put simply, when Japan buys our raw materials, whether they are civilian or military is decided by us. If we say military, they are military. If we say civilian, they are civilian. What kind of shock will this bring to Japan? Today, we're not even talking about the military. Japan's military industry is far behind ours. We're talking about industry and what Japan is about to face. In 2024, Japan's trade deficit reached 5.33 trillion yen. For a resource-poor industrial nation, that is already a nightmare. But this is only the beginning. This round of controls is the real killing move, a top-down, inside-out systematic lockdown of Japan's industrial system. The entire industrial base and the entire economy face the risk of systemic paralysis. According to the updated 2026 list, there are 1,005 categories of dual-use items and technologies. Without our exports, Japan would be completely stunned. Of course, it's not absolute despair. If Japan stubbornly endures sugar costs and lower output, it might barely find some substitutes somewhere on Earth. But here's the key point. Out of those 1,005 items, there are 363 that Japan simply cannot live without. This is absolute dependence. Once supply is cut, production lines shut down immediately. The lifeline of Japanese manufacturing is entirely in our hands. The controls are already in place. The threat of systemic paralysis is right in front of Japan. The military industry, already finished. We've talked about Photoresist. Now let's look at a few more examples. Take new energy vehicles. Japan still dreams of transformation. Now, it can only keep dreaming. The three core components, motors, batteries, and electronic controls, all heavily depend on China. The heart of NEVs, the permanent magnet synchronous motor, sources 90% of its neodymium iron boron from China. As for dysprosium and terbium, the absolute necessities of necessities, dependence is close to 100%. In electronic control systems, 80% dependence on China for composite power semiconductors, 90% for battery management chips, 70% for onboard sensors, battery materials, at least 70%, often 90%. There is no escaping dependence. Now look at industrial robots. Japan calls itself Kingdom of Industrial Robots. Yet giants like Yaskawa and Fennec source over 40% of their servo system core components from China. Rare earth permanent magnets for robot joints are 100% dependent on China. Japan's own reports show, once supply is cut, robot production capacity would immediately plunge by 30% to 50%. Orders would be taken but never delivered. Market share would be rapidly eaten away by Chinese and German brands. I won't even list the rest. Precision machine tools, engineering machinery, aerospace components, specialty alloys and carbon fiber composites, the very bones of industry, all rely on China. That's why the moment the ban was announced, Financial markets across these sectors collapsed across the board. China's control there like a precise surgical knife, cutting off the channels that supply key industrial blood and nutrients. The consequence is not a few factories shutting down, nor a single sector stalling. It is total suffocation of the entire industrial chain from raw materials and components to R&D and manufacturing. Japan's economy was ethereal GDP losses, a rapid collapse in global competitiveness, and an industrial path cut cleanly in half. Japan has been forced into a corner. Finally, let me ask one question. What future does Japan have? The answer is simple. After this, Japan has no future left. In 1929, a global capitalist economic crisis erupted. Japan, heavily dependent on imports and exports, was hit hard. It chose desperation, launching the criminal invasion of China, burning, killing, and plundering, slaughtering over 35 million of my compatriots. Today, Japan remains unrepentant, once again preparing for aggression, shouting that if Taiwan has trouble, Japan has trouble. Then we impose full control. Let Japan experience another economic crisis. Let its industry come to a complete halt. I want to see whether you still have the courage to do it again. If you don't dare to fire the first shot, then we'll force you to. 90 years ago, Japan was an industrial nation, and we were an agricultural one. It trampled our land with warships and tanks. Today, we are the world's industrial hegemon, and Japan will send it back to the agrarian age.